From the New York Times, it's The Headlines. I'm Michael Simon Johnson. Today's Monday, September 23rd. Here's what we're covering.
About an hour ago, following indications that Hezbollah was preparing to fire towards Israeli territory, we began striking terrorist targets throughout Lebanon.
In the Middle East this morning, the Israeli military's chief spokesman warned residents of southern Lebanon who live near Hezbollah strongholds to evacuate ahead of a series of Israeli airstrikes. In the first of several attacks, dozens of Israeli warplanes hit more than 150 targets, according to the Israeli military. The spokesman said the military was currently focusing on a, quote, aerial campaign only. Lebanon's state-run news agency reported extensive damage across a number of towns, and early reports from the health ministry said at least 50 people had been killed and over 300 were injured. The strikes came after a week of escalation between Israel and Hezbollah. Yesterday, Hezbollah, which has been firing on Israel in solidarity with Hamas, launched more than 100 rockets, cruise missiles, and drones towards Israel. On Friday, an Israeli airstrike near the Lebanese capital killed several senior Hezbollah commanders, and an earlier widespread attack on pagers and walkie-talkies used by Hezbollah injured hundreds, if not thousands, of rank-and-file members. The United Nations Special Coordinator for Lebanon warned over the weekend that the region is on the brink of an imminent catastrophe and that there is, quote, no military solution that will make either side safer. Live coverage of the conflict is on the New York Times app or at nytimes.com. New polling from the Times and Siena College zooms in on 3 battleground states that have been at the center of the race in recent weeks. Both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have been campaigning heavily in Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina, and the polls show that Trump has the lead. He's up 3 points in North Carolina, 4 in Georgia, and up 5 points in Arizona. Overall, likely voters in the so-called Sunbelt states say that Trump improved their lives when he was president, and they're worried that Harris would not if she gets elected. The poll also found that about 15% of voters in those 3 states are undecided.
This is a group where when we polled them a month ago, they leaned slightly towards Harris. Now they lean a little bit towards Trump.
Ruth Igelnik conducts and analyzes polls for The Times.
We asked these undecided and swing voters specifically what were their concerns about Trump and Harris. And for Harris, some mentioned her economic policies, but honestly, the biggest concern that undecided and persuadable voters had about either of them were sort of personality-based. They were concerned about the way that Trump talks and the things that he says. And with Harris, there were a lot of concerns raised among undecided voters about her trustworthiness and honesty, and then, some about sort of her personality and ability to handle the job.
Beyond the Sun Belt, the Times national polling average shows Harris still in the lead, with 50% to Donald Trump's 47%. Meanwhile, in the North Carolina governor's race, the fallout continues after a report revealed disturbing comments made by the Republican nominee there. The Times has learned that 8 members of Mark Robinson's campaign, most of his senior staff, have resigned, including his campaign manager and finance director. Last week, CNN published dozens of remarks that Robinson had made in the comments section of a porn site about a decade ago, including calling himself a, quote, black Nazi, saying he supported slavery, and that he spied on women in public gym showers as a teenager. Robinson, who's currently North Carolina's lieutenant governor, has denied that he wrote the posts. In a statement released after his staff resigned, he said his campaign was in a, quote, strong position to make our case to the voters and win. Recent polls show him as much as 13 points behind his Democratic opponent, Josh Stein, the state's attorney general. House Speaker Mike Johnson and congressional leaders have announced a spending deal that would fund the government through December 20th in order to avoid a government shutdown just weeks before the election. Leaders from both parties unveiled the deal yesterday, and Johnson said he would put it to a vote later this week. To make the spending deal happen, Johnson had to drop a demand he'd been personally committed to, requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote, a provision pushed by Trump and supported by the hard right wing of the Republican Party.
Speaker Mike Johnson told his colleagues in a letter on Sunday that he took the deal, even though it wasn't what he wanted or the Republican conservatives wanted, because it would be, quote, political malpractice to pitch Congress into a shutdown right ahead of a November election.
Times congressional reporter Karin Demerjian has been covering the negotiations.
Control of the House is going to be coming down to the wire. So will control of the Senate and the presidency. And Johnson basically told his colleagues it would be a bad idea to be bickering about these budget details and they'll live to fight another day. That's probably not going to sit well with the right or Trump, and we will see how many Republicans flee from this deal when it hits the floor this week. Johnson may likely have to turn to Democrats to carry this bill across the finish line, and he's been criticized by his rank and file for making these deals with Democrats, necessary as they are, to avoid shutdowns and keep the federal dollars flowing.
For the most part, the spending deal keeps the government funded at its current levels, with one notable exception. The bill would give the Secret Service an additional $231 million. The agency has been short-staffed for years and has been under intense scrutiny after Donald Trump was shot in July and after an apparent assassination attempt on Trump was foiled earlier this month. And finally, the Chicago White Sox are on their way to reaching a new low.
That ball is gone! Home run, Fernando!
Last night, they put on a dismal performance against the San Diego Padres,
He struck him out, and the Padres win!
officially putting them on track to become the all-time worst team in modern baseball history. Sunday's loss means the White Sox are now tied for most losses by a modern-day Major League team in a single season at 120 losses.
Nowhere but up. Yeah, you can't go lower than this, son.
At a popular Sox bar on Chicago's South Side, loyal fans watched as their team made history for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's super depressing to watch a team every night where you think, they're probably going to lose this game.
Among other reasons for the team's long string of losses, people close to the White Sox tell the Times that it hasn't integrated data and analytics into its operations the way other teams have. The Sox now join the 1962 New York Mets in holding the losing record, but there are still 6 regular season games to go. Plenty of chances for Sox fans to celebrate in their own way.
We're right there.
You're right there. You might as well be the number one. If you're going to be the best.
Yeah, you don't want to be like runner-up on the worst bad team.
You want to be the best, worst.
Best, worst,
That's
other,
what
yes.
This is like our trophy. We get that.
Those are the headlines. Today on The Daily, how Telegram became one of the most popular messaging apps in the world and a forum for criminals and terrorists. That's next in the New York Times audio app or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Michael Simon Johnson, in for Tracy Mumford. We'll be back tomorrow.